we're here for the first night of Hanukkah, and it's the Feast of Dedication. Have any of you guys actually, I would assume that several of you have done Hanukkah before, or maybe not? Not? Okay, well that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, of course, the festival of Hanukkah actually means dedication. Dedication.
I'm thinking that word. I was trying to see it.
Yes. So dedication. Do you know why they call it the Feast of Dedication? What are we dedicating? What is dedication? What is it all about? Does anybody know?
Was it because of the legend that the little oil that lasted for 1 day lasted for 8 days?
Not quite, but that's an excellent.
Well, that's one of the stories.
That's one of the stories surrounding the
rededication of the temple.
legend.
How about the
Because it was
Very close.
the altar?
Very close. Hayden?
because it was.
Oh,
polluted,
look at Hayden
something
go.
Defiled.
Hayden
Defiled.
answers the
Hayden,
question.
What did you say?
The dedicating the altar that was desecrated.
Yeah,
Yes, very good.
Defiled.
Good job, boy. Yes, so because of Antiochus Epiphanes IV having come and desecrated the altar, they actually had to just demolish that altar. And according to some of the research that people have done, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, it says in the book of Macabbees that they took those stones that had been desecrated and they demolished that altar, but they didn't know what to do with the stones. If you read in the book of Maccabees, it says they didn't know what to do with the stones because they were holy, but they had been defiled, and they said, we don't know what to do with these stones. We can't just toss them out. And so the Talmud, I believe, indicates that the book of Maccabees says clearly that they said, we will wait for a great prophet to come. Perhaps the Messiah will come and tell us what to do with these stones. And so they put them in Solomon's porch, which that may be ringing a bell for you. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
It's kind of cool. But so this Feast of Dedication has come to symbolize not just the victory of the Hebrew people over their, Greek oppressors who were trying to strip all of the, culture and language and Torah and the feasts and the Sabbath and circumcision and all of the things that we're told to practice in the Bible. Antiochus, tried to wipe all that off the face of the planet.
No stone unturned.
No stone unturned. And so they, the story that they fought and they were victorious and they reclaimed the temple and they had to rededicate that altar for 7 days. And on the 8th day, you can begin the daily sacrifice again. And so that's why there are 8 days of Hanukkah. And so we're gonna do a brief reading from actually a children's book, because I think it's a very nice and succinct. I mean, we have the book of Maccabees.
That is not succinct.
That is not succinct. This gives you the whole history. I actually took just the first part of the book of the Maccabees and broke it into several pages of reading per night for the 8 nights, and we read the whole story from the book of Maccabees. But that's a little crazy for
So
tonight.
that's all 4 chapters.
Yeah, of the book of First Maccabees.
Just the first book.
That's the first book, not the second book of the Maccabees. So yeah, I broke it up into 8 sections for reading for the.
Which book of the Maccabees has about the candles, the oil not running out?
It's not in the book of Maccabees. It's in the Talmud.
Yes.
The Talmudic scholars, 5, 7, 1,000 years later, incorporated it into Hanukkah. There's no evidence
So this is one of
for.
those things that are tradition. It's not actual.
Tradition.
Just that
Yeah,
part.
we don't know. The Maccabees didn't record it.
So if that, I was upset
Set in
when
the
that guy
Torah.
said that tonight. But
He was right. I told you he was right.
Yeah, the mythologies and legends surrounding the fact that when they came to light the menorah, they only found one cruse of oil
Right.
that had been sanctified for lighting the menorah, and that it lasted for 8 days. That story is not in the book of the Maccabees, but it is in the Talmud. Don't know whether it's true.
Am I reading?
Yeah, it didn't happen according to the Maccabees, but who knows?
Are you gonna show everybody a picture after?
I am. Yes, I am. Of course I am. So the first thing that we do is, now this is not a menorah. A menorah is a 7-branched candlestick. This one has 9.
The one on the TV.
The
Yeah.
one on the TV.
The one on the TV
Is wrong.
is correct. That's a
It's a
7.
real
It's not that it's representing artistically correct according to the biblical passage, but it does have 7
Right.
branches instead of 9. That's a menorah. This is a Hanukkah.
Will you tell them
That
the
one's a
meme you
Hanukkah.
saw? Just for fun.
Oh yeah,
So
I
what?
saw
Just
a
for fun.
meme
It's
on
totally
on
unrelated.
Facebook a while back. It was kind of funny. It wasn't even related to Hanukkah. It was months ago.
Are you comfortable on your knees?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
The
They're all
there was a
Mine
picture.
hurts.
There was a picture of Benjamin Netanyahu with the Pope in Israel, and he was showing them the fancy new Hanukkah, the menorah that they had made. And there was a caption that said, "Hey, if you see one of these lying around, we lost one a while back."
Because the Romans.
Because on
You
the
know
on the Arch of Titus, when Titus sacked Jerusalem, it shows them in bas relief carrying off the menorah. You know, and he's like, "Hey, if you guys got one of these lying around, let us know."
It's in the basement of the Vatican.
It's in the basement of the Vatican. Yes,
Dig it up.
I thought that was pretty funny. Would have been funny if you actually said that to him. That would have been even better.
He did.
If he wanted to, he would have.
Yeah, I have no
I don't
doubt.
think he was like
So
that.
now the tradition, and this is a tradition of man. There's no question about it. This is not a biblical commandment. This is not a biblical feast. Now, you read in a Siddur or the Talmud, this is commanded. They will say, "Blessed are you." I mean, if you look at this little piece of paper that I gave you, this is the blessing that is recited prior to the lighting of the Hanukkah candles. Now, that first one says, "Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, the King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to be a light into the world." That is my rendition, because the actual Siddur says the same thing, except you have commanded us to light Sabbath candles, or have commanded us to light Hanukkah candles. Like, where's that at? So I'm not going to say what they say exactly.
Right.
And I think, frankly, that my interpretation is a little more appropriate for Christians who follow Messiah. You know, you've commanded us to be a light in the world, and not, "Blessed are you who has commanded us to light a Hanukkah lamp." It's not a biblical Moedim. It's not a commanded feast. But it is a man-made tradition, just exactly like the 4th of July,
Birthdays.
or birthdays, or
So the
Thanksgiving.
Feast of Dedication, you mean,
Yes.
is not,
It's not
Purim.
biblically mandated. Purim is also not a feast of Yehovah. It was just an invention of the Jews.
Historical, because these
A
are all
histor-
historical things.
Yeah, it's a historical thing that is celebrated, you know.
Like
And like I have
Independence
said,
Day or
yeah,
something.
there's nothing wrong with celebrating our independence from
Right.
Britain. There's nothing wrong with celebrating Thanksgiving, you know, at least not in my opinion. I did see some Hebrew roots people online demolishing people practicing Thanksgiving. I thought, oh my goodness.
next.
Anyway, so this is a man-made tradition. But you know what? As far as man-made traditions go, this one is as good as any I have ever seen, because it really does commemorate something that's special and is driven by a need to keep oneself sanctified and holy, apart from the corruption and the paganism of the world around you.
Except
But
in
this
the-
is where it
in the
started.
US.
Yeah,
Except in the US. It's
Yeah, and
becoming
a lot
more
of-
like a Christmas
that's
celebration.
true. In a lot of
Beating up Christmas because they have only one day and they have 8.
yeah, that's true. And you know, there is some Reformed and conservative Judaism type people who are really starting to incorporate a lot of Christmas stuff into Hanukkah. There was just a big argument in Israel this last week with the rabbinate condemning businesses who were opening up for tourism, you know, to come and see the holy sites during the Christmas season. They were putting up Christmas trees in the lobbies of the hotels in order to appeal to the Christians who were visiting the Holy Land on their pilgrimages. And the rabbinate said,
Shame on the Christians.
get rid of them, get rid of them. And there was they were fighting
A
about
little
it.
bit of friction there.
A little friction there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the merchants are wanting to appeal to the Christian
But then I
pilgrims.
didn't realize until watching that tonight, this afternoon, that in John 10:22
Is the Feast
is
of
the
Lights.
feast of
Dedication.
dedication.
But
Right.
not
And
only
Jesus
that,
was-
that is when Christ healed the blind man
Yeah.
that had never seen,
Right.
and that was prophesied back in the Old Testament. When a blind man is healed that was born blind,
Mm.
that is the prophet.
Mm.
And that's
It's
what he
interesting
did on
stuff,
that.
isn't it?
And it
On the
was on a
feast of- on
Sabbath.
that
It was
day.
on a
Well, it
Sabbath.
was on a
that
Sabbath.
day.
It was. That's
Yeah,
right.
and that was also the day when he declared to be the light.
The light of the world. That's right.
So Yeshua wanted to be there for the
Yeah.
Feast of Lights.
Well,
He
Yeshua
kinda like
clearly was at the temple
The light,
during
the
I
light
think
of the
he was
world was
conceived
there.
at
for
the
the
light of the world
Feast
was
of
there for
Lights.
the Feast of Lights. That is pretty cool.
Yeah,
And they
that's
give
what I
the blind
heard too,
man
Jerry,
light.
was that he was conceived.
Yeah.
That's when he was conceived, right? That's
Last
right.
day of Hanukkah.
Yeah, yeah, I have heard that as well, and that would line up with
9 months
9
later to
months
be-
gestation, be born in the Feast of Sukkot. Absolutely makes perfect sense. So it's good stuff. But
The atheists
the
will tell you that.
yeah, the first thing that we'll do is we'll actually light our Hanukkah, and if you know anything about the menorah, they kind of treat this in a similar fashion, with the center one being called the shamash, which is the servant, called the servant candle. And this candle is always lit first, and then you light the other candles from this servant candle. And what you do is you light the center candle, and then you light the other candles with that one, and it goes like this. This one will be for the first day of Hanukkah. This one will be for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth days of Hanukkah. But you light them in reverse order. So you put them into the holder from extreme right to far left, and then you light them in reverse order. So tomorrow there will be another candle here. You light that one for the new candle gets lit first, and you move through to the last candle.
So how
You know
long do
why?
you keep it
We leave them lit until they make a
Burn
mess.
down and-
lit? Like drip?
Until they make a mess, and then we blow them
The
out.
next night you put new candles.
And then
in
we
those
put new
places.
candles in those places. Yeah, we start with in fact, that's if you buy a Hanukkah with
come
a
in
set of
boxes of
candles, they come in
45.
boxes that account for the number that you'll need each day, unless you break one or something.
Well, they give you one extra.
Yeah.
But isn't a menorah supposed to be lighted forever?
Yeah. Well, that is my understanding, is that it's not supposed to go out at all. Yeah. So that now again, this is not
As I said,
related to
you
a
might-
menorah. It's
So
not
this
related.
Hanukkah never existed
No.
before this.
This is an
story.
invention
Tradition.
for the holiday. Yeah, absolutely. So a standard menorah. In fact, I know many of you probably have went and tried to purchase a menorah, and they're very hard to find, because in a Judaica store, the Jews who control the Judaica stores will not sell you a 7-branched menorah,
Only the Hanukkah one?
because they say there's only one menorah, and that's in the temple, and no one else is allowed to have one.
So they
Now,
won't
that is
duplicate.
not in the Bible. It didn't. There's no commandment that says, hey, we want to have a little, menorah in our home. There's nothing mentioned about that. But through the rabbis, have come down and said, you may not have a personal menorah. There's only
Maybe
one,
to try
and
and
it's in the
prevent
temple.
idol worship.
It may have been to prevent idol worship, building a fence around the commandment, possibly, absolutely. But so to find a 7-branch menorah can be a little difficult.
Yeah,
Going
but
through.
then they make the 8. That could still be an idol
I suppose, yeah.
if you want to.
So, I mean, we were able to find one, and some people make their own. What's interesting, too, is that a lot of Hanukkahs you will see are not actually built like this. They don't resemble a menorah at all. It can be on a flat base with just 8
Oh
candles.
yeah, right. I heard
So
that.
some people might
As long
have
as
an
they have to be
issue with
arranged.
it looking like a menorah. You know what I'm saying? And they would even say, well, don't even make it look like that.
Right,
Yeah,
but
but
it
that's-
has to be straight and one in the
Yeah,
center
right.
has to be higher. That's
Right.
all they ask you to do.
Right. So
I see.
there's a lot of tradition around this and a lot of different ideas. But what we do is everybody has this piece of paper, Before we light the candle, we say these blessings. The third part at the bottom is and I put it up on the screen as well. The last part at the bottom is only said on the first night of Hanukkah. And then these two blessings are repeated each night as you are preparing to light the candles. So let us do that now. And we have always, as a family, we read them all together. Everybody out loud, just reading along.
So we're gonna read all three.
We're going to read all three of them out loud, all along, and then we'll light our candles. Ready?
Okay.
Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and has commanded us to be a light into the world. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who performed miracles for our forefathers in those days at this time. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who has granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion. Amen. So now, I will light the shamash candle, and then we'll have Angela, the firstborn son.
That's the way we do it.
Johnson, what about you? Are you
No.
Johnson's candle comes later. We have our firstborn son take the shamash and light the first of the Hanukkah candles.
Catch your hair on fire.
Don't catch your hair on fire. Very nice. Excellent. Thank you, sir. Nicely done. Nicely done. Okay, now I'm going to read you a story. It's story time.
Story time. Story time.
Yeah.
I will.
All right, here we go. Ready? At Hanukkah, we tell this story of ancient faithfulness and glory, of freedom lost and freedom won by Jews who knew what must be done.
Rhyming.
It's like a poem, isn't it? The Greeks had gods, yes, more than one. God of the sea, God of the sun. Throw in a party, God for fun. King Antiochus ruled the land. Bow down to them was his command. And that's not all. I order you to dress and eat and act Greek too. No way, said every faithful Jew. Sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right and to do it too. But Antiochus had great power. When they refused, his mood turned sour. Jerusalem, he snarled and frowned, will desecrate their holy ground, put statues of our gods around, stamp out the traitors where they're found. Some Jews gave in, and some Jews fled. Then one Jew, Mattathias, said, to your idols I won't pray, your laws aren't mine, I won't obey. He drew his sword and got away. Sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right and do it too.
That's what it always says.
But Mattathias said, I'm old. We need a leader, strong and bold. I have 5 sons. Whom should I choose? And he conducted interviews. Jonathan is plenty smart, and Shimon knows a martial art. The other 2 will do their part. Oh, but Judah, what a heart. He called to Judah at first light. Our farmers, shepherds, you'll unite, deep in the mountains out of sight. With patience, teach them how to fight, then lead attacks through dark of night. Said Judah, eager, brave, and bright, count on me to do what is right, with all my heart and all my might. Sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right and do it too. So Judah had the scrappy band to fight for freedom through the land. Now all admired his strong command. He's like a hammer in our hand. So Maccabee was his new name. The Macabbees gained instant fame. The armies of the king were strong. They thought they'd win. They were wrong. The Maccabees fought hard and long. King Antiochus finally said, enough, enough. Enough bloodshed. Then Judah's men saw just ahead Jerusalem with ruins spread. And though they'd won, they moaned and said, all is lost, this place is dead. Did Judah wail and hang his head? No, he told them all instead, sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right and do it too. Our temple is a royal mess, but we have come to repossess. So do I have a volunteer to get the idols out of here? I see the courtyard's gone to weeds. Who'd like to plant some flower seeds? Someone called, look what I've found, our broken altar on the ground. And Judah said, who's good with bricks? These are problems we can fix. Enthusiasm filled the air as people scurried everywhere. A new menorah, aren't we clever? Its holy light will burn forever. A search for oil was underway, but bad news spoiled their holiday. This jug will last for just one day. The people cried, but it takes 8 to make more oil, and that's too late. You're right, said Judah, we can't wait. We'll use what we have, that little bit. They all agreed. The oil was lit. The next day, still, it burned like new. The 3rd and 4th and 5th day, too. For 3 more days, their wonder grew. Free to worship without fear, they said, remember, every year, a miracle has happened here. And like brave Judah, they all knew, sometimes it only takes a few who know what's right and do it too. If Judah were alive today, what would he do? What would he say? He'd smile at the familiar sight of our menorah burning bright and join in prayers that we recite. He'd thrill us with a tale or two about his brave and loyal crew. We'd beg for more when he was through. But Judah lived long, long ago. Of course, he can't come to see us, so some of the things we'll never know. Yet we'll remember this, it's true. Sometimes it only takes a few. That's it. We found that little book for online at a little Judaica shop or maybe Amazon or something for the kids to just explain the story of Hanukkah real simply, and it was cool. It was a great time.
Noble doesn't carry that?
Oh, I don't know. They might, but
Amazon.
you know, I wanted to share just a couple of passages with you that are in relation to this, and then just have a brief discussion. I wasn't going to keep you guys, too late. But I wanted to compare a few passages, and one of them is from the book of Daniel, and you can definitely tie a lot of these things together. And I think that we did this last year in a little bit of conversation. But it says in Daniel chapter 11, verse 30, if you want to take a look at that, it's talking about the anti-Messiah. It says that he menaces the Holy Covenant and makes his opposition effective. While he returns, he has an understanding with those who forsake the Holy Covenant, and armed forces from him shall stand about. They shall violate the sanctuary, the stronghold, take away the continuous sacrifice, and give it over to the abomination of desolation. And those who condemn the covenant he will pollute with slickness. Yet the people, knowing their Elohim, will be steadfast and act accordingly. The intelligent of the people will cause many to understand, yet they are stumbled by the sword and the blaze, by captivity and plunder for days. Even in their stumbling are they helped with a little help, yet obligated to them are many by slick dealings. Some of the intelligent shall stumble, to refine and to purify and to whiten them till the end of the era, for it is yet further to the appointed time. Now this is interesting because this was written in approximately 500 BC. And this story of the Maccabees is when, do you guys know?
163,
163, 165 BC. So approximately 300 and some odd years before the events of Antiochus Epiphanes, Daniel the prophet is prophesying. Now, this sounds very much like what we have just read in abbreviated form, but if you read the book of the Maccabees, it's really, really clear that this thing that Daniel is talking about is definitely mirroring that. And I'm certain that the Maccabees and the people of that era would have interpreted Daniel in this fashion and probably would have anticipated, well, we're at the end of days. Because this is actually the section where the angel is making clear the revelation that he had been given, and he says this is for the time of the end, which is interesting because 165 BC is definitely not the time of the end. The Messiah hadn't even arrived yet. So, but they definitely interpreted it that way and saw themselves. They even, if you read the book of the Maccabees, you'll see clearly that they believed that they were at the end of the age and that this was the prophecy of Daniel.
Right, and Jesus
It
also
sounds
referred to
like
the
it.
same thing.
Yeah, and that's the next thing that's kind of interesting is, well, I'm going to get to that in just a second, Grace, but check out this next section. This is just a brief section of the book of 1 Maccabees from chapter 1, verses 41 through 64. It says, "Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people." Sound familiar?
NWO.
Absolutely. "And every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Indeed, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land. And he forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and the appointed times, and pollute the sanctuary and the holy people. They set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrificed swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the Torah, and change all of the ordinances. And whoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, should die. In the same manner he wrote to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice, city by city. Then many of the people were gathered unto them, that is, everyone who forsook the Torah. And so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places wherever they could flee for safety. Now the 15th day of the month of Kislev, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burned incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the scrolls of the Torah which they found, they burnt them with fire. And whoever was found with any of the books of the Testament, or any committed to the Torah, the king's command was that they should be put to death. Thus they did by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of Elohim, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised, and they hanged the infants around their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. However, many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. They would rather die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died, and there was a very great wrath upon Israel. This is atrocious. We've not really...
It's worse than today.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, I don't know that we've seen anything like this before.
That sounds like the same stuff going on as you might imagine at the end of Revelation that it's talking about.
There's a lot of similarities, very much
Or
similarities.
just all beheading anyway.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is I can't think of a time in history when something like this has happened. I mean, I know the Jews had suffered a lot of persecution, but something like this, trying to strip them of their ability to worship at all, is fairly rare.
They also got persecuted a whole lot in the Holocaust.
That's true. But the difference there would be that the Nazis just wanted to kill them all. They didn't care what religion they practiced. They didn't really care. They didn't have time to worry about that. Let's just kill them all.
No, but they
And that
killed
has
them in
happened
very
many
inhumane
times.
ways.
What's that?
They killed them in very inhumane ways.
Yeah, they did. And that has happened many times in history where the Jews have been tortured and killed. But this is the only time that I'm aware of where somebody said, oh, you can live, but you can't live the way you want to. You have to do things the way we do.
Constantine in the Roman Catholic.
Well, if it hadn't been for the Maccabees, there would be no scrolls, sacred scrolls, there'd be nothing.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have a Bible today, we wouldn't have the Torah today. If they hadn't stepped up to the plate
Sure.
and beat the Greeks or whatever it was.
Right. You know, it is also you can find in the Talmud and some of the older scrolls that during the time when this stuff started happening with Antiochus Epiphanes, the priests who were serving in the temple before it was desecrated actually took a lot of the scrolls in the temple library and fled to the desert and
Hid them in caves.
Hid them
in the
somewhere.
Dead
hid them
Sea.
in caves
By the Dead Sea.
by the Dead Sea.
What if that's the Dead Sea Scrolls?
That's
I
the-
wonder. I think that that's exactly
Could be.
what happened. And in fact,
They knew how
if
to
you
preserve them.
there's an Israeli historian from the Hebrew University who is a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar, and she has some really good evidence. Her name is Professor Rachel Elyor, and she travels all over the world giving lectures about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and she has some very interesting conclusions that she's reached in suggesting that these priests who were serving now, because you know that the Maccabees are what are they?
Tribe of Judah.
They're Hasmoneans,
What's that mean?
like half Jew.
Oh.
What was that town?
Half Jew
Herod.
what?
Was
Oh.
Hasmonean.
They were Zionists.
These are not where they got the priests to serve in this temple that they repurified is a curious thing, because the priests who had been there and the ones,
Fled.
according to the historical research, who fled were the Zadokites, who would later become the Sadducees.
Well, the old man, wasn't he the father of the Maccabee, of
Yeah.
Judas Maccabee?
Yeah.
He's the one that killed
Mattathias.
somebody and then he killed a whole bunch of Greeks afterwards?
Yeah, that's in the story of the book. You know, he actually, just like Pincus,
And,
in the book of Numbers, when that woman, you know, after the Baal Peor incident, where Pincus ran that woman and the guy through with the spear, same exact situation. Mattathias saw people, you know, stepping up to sacrifice to these idols that Antiochus had ordered, and he slew several of his own people who were stepping up to do that, and then fled. But the priests of the temple had already taken the sacred literature, because they can't go in and take the menorah. They can't take the table of showbread. They're not allowed in there. Only the high priest is even allowed to go into that part of the temple. So they took
whatever they could.
the only thing they could take was the books, the scrolls. And they ran and they hid in the desert and hid
That's the
them in
more
caves.
important thing, is the Word of God.
That's very important, absolutely. Now, we can always replace a menorah, you know, but replacing the words, that's different.
Hard.
Yeah, especially,
One
you know,
mistake
and real word.
The
Yeah.
whole thing is out.
especially when they're, you know, and I mean, it did the same thing. We were just looking at something today in the city of Rome during the persecutions. They were rounding up Torah scrolls and burning them and making huge bonfires. So this is what you have happening at this time. It's a very unique thing. But what's interesting, and I'm sure it puzzled the people who were listening to Yeshua talk, says, when you therefore see the abomination spoken by Daniel the prophet, they must have been thinking to themselves, wait a minute, that happened 160 years ago. What are you talking about? And I think that reveals to us, and John, in his book of the Revelation of Messiah, makes it even clearer, that was just a foreshadowing of what was coming. Did you have
Could be
something
worse,
to
huh?
add? It sure kind of sounds that way, or at least very similar. So yeah, that's not. This was just a foreshadowing.
When Christ was giving his little speech to his 4 disciples at Mount Olive, on the Mount of Olives, he said the same thing. When you see this happen, the abomination of desolation, he kind of authenticated it. It wasn't back then.
Right.
And maybe it was back then, but it's also going to be
Right.
again sometime in the future.
Right, absolutely. And he also authenticated, and here's the latest, one of some of the most, when you look at scholars who will tell you that the book of Daniel was written during the time of the Maccabees.
Right, because
That
it's too
is right.
accurate.
It's too accurate. It's not, they can't believe that the Bible is prophetic, and so they say the book of Daniel was not written at the time of Daniel when Nebuchadnezzar. They wrote the book and put Daniel's name on it during this time because it's just too accurate. But Yeshua
much
himself
detail.
says, as described by Daniel the prophet. So he is confirming that Daniel wrote this, not the Hasmoneans at the 165 years ago. It was more like 600 and some odd years ago.
Right. But also, the prophecy of Jesus seemed to have been also partially fulfilled in the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, and yet it says at the end of the time again.
Right.
So again,
We're
it
getting,
will happen
yeah,
some
you
more,
can
some
see
more,
these
several
prophecies
times.
kind of swinging around and going smack. It happens, and then it keeps swinging around and going smack. It happens
Nothing
again.
under the sun.
Yeah, nothing new
Several
under the
times.
sun.
History repeats
Exactly.
itself, huh?
Yeah, and then so the details with which this prophecy is fulfilled by Daniel here in the Maccabean period is pretty succinct. And yes, there are a good amount of similarities to what happened when the Romans under Titus sacked the Temple of Jerusalem. But as far as to my knowledge, if you read the book of Josephus, and there's only like 2 other sources that you can find in relation to that, there's nothing about them setting up an idol. I mean, the temple was destroyed by
They
fire.
were saying that
They set up another temple.
I've heard them say that the eagle of the
and it
Roman
was put
banner was
there.
something like that, but I don't,
'Cause you
it's
they're
not quite
supposed to
as,
be there.
yeah,
They're not
and they were
supposed
just
to be
murdering
there.
everybody. They weren't trying to say, hey, you can't have Torah scrolls and you can't circumcise your kids and you can't observe the Sabbath. That would come later during the time when the Roman Catholic Church came along. That would be probably the most close that I can think of is during the Inquisition.
Yeah, but there was no temple.
There was no temple, but that would have been very permissible to round up Jews and either forcibly get them to convert to Christianity, Roman Catholic Christianity, or kill them. But certainly burn Torah scrolls and.
How did the Crusades fit in?
Now
Well,
that would
that's
just
true.
be in relation to Jerusalem itself,
The
because
Muslims.
because the Muslims had gotten control of the
600.
temple.
So it wouldn't
Real
be like
estate.
this.
No, that would have been much later,
700
300 years later. Yeah, 700
It was
AD.
Robin Hood's day. Must have been around.
Robin Hood. That's
Well,
right.
so
It
you
actually,
made there-
the story of Robin Hood is actually,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
Crusades, yeah.
his brother was the king of England because the brother who was supposed to be the king went to fight in the Crusades. Yeah, absolutely. So then, yeah, Richard the Lionheart, exactly. You can read about that in Shakespeare. It's awesome. And then so you can look here at approximately 26 AD. You've got Matthew telling us of Yeshua's words talking about this same thing. And you shall about to be hearing of battles and tidings of battles. See that you are not alarmed, for it must be occurring, but not as yet is the consummation. So I think that this is what he is telling them in relation to, yeah, you're about to see Jerusalem destroyed and leveled and burned to the ground and a bunch of people killed and the Jews just scattered all over the earth. It is not yet the time of the consummation. For roused shall be a nation against a nation, and a kingdom against a kingdom, and there shall be famines and earthquakes in various places, yet all these things are just the beginning of birth pains. Then they shall be giving you up to affliction, and they shall be killing you, and you shall be hated by all of the nations because of my name. And then many shall be snared, and they shall be giving up one another and hating one another. And many false prophets shall be roused, and shall be deceiving many. And because of the multiplication of lawlessness, that is anomia, Torahlessness, the love of many shall be growing cold or cooling. Yet he who endures to the consummation, he shall be saved. And proclaimed shall be this message of the kingdom in the whole inhabited earth for a testimony to all the nations, and then the consummation shall be arriving. Whenever, then, you may be perceiving the abomination of desolation, which is declared through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let him who is reading understand or apprehend, then Let those in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not descend to take away the things out of his house. And let him who is in the field not turn back behind him to pick up his coat. Now woe to those who are pregnant and those who are giving suckling to children in those days. Now be praying that your flight may not be occurring in winter, nor yet on a Sabbath. For then shall be great affliction, such as has not occurred from the beginning of the world till now, neither under any circumstances may be occurring. And except those days were discounted, no flesh at all would be saved. Yet because of the chosen, those days shall be discounted.
That means shortened.
Yes.
Yes, interesting stuff. Couple of things of note here. He is saying that, he's referencing back to Daniel and saying, this is, when you see this thing spoken of by Daniel, he said, you think that it sounds to me like he's telling them, you think what happened under Antiochus Epiphanes was bad.
Picnic.
That was nothing compared to what's coming here for your people. That's a very
Never
challenging, very
before.
challenging
But
thing.
we see all before that, talking about, you shall be hated all
Mhm.
by all the nations because
Mhm.
of my name, and in several places in there made me think of, here in the U.S., we have it so easy. What are we doing wrong?
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah, that's true.
we're not
We've
standing.
we've gotten lazy
Oh, sure.
in our walk.
That's why
with
we
We've
have
become
ICE,
very
our
complacent. Yeah.
relationship.
Well, they
We have
hate us, but
Obama.
we're still legally
I
protected.
think it was a punishment.
That's gonna disappear
I don't
eventually.
think there's
Wouldn't-
any doubt.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
But he's also bringing along the Lord's will and His plan.
That's true. Absolutely. He is. Leaders are appointed to punish
Isn't it amazing
or
how the
bless.
Sabbath is still in effect?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting
Yeah.
too.
That's
I was
one
going to
for
kind of
uppers.
bring that out. It's like pray that your flight not be on the Sabbath. Well, that doesn't matter because nobody observes the Sabbath these days.
Oh, but he's talking to the believers, not to the whole world.
True that.
When I read that, it was almost like this stuff's going to be happening, but when it happens and it's in the winter on a Sabbath, then that's going to be the great affliction such as not occurred to me. To me, and as other people have interpreted exact opposite way, that it wouldn't be in the winter and it wouldn't be on a Sabbath, but for me it was like, no, the one that is the worst will be the one that occurs in the winter.
He's
on
giving you a
Sabbath.
warning there.
I'm
Sounds like it
pregnant.
could be a
It's
warning.
like
Well,
that's
it's
the
saying
signal
pray that
that
it's
it is
not.
the
Yeah.
worst
Yeah,
one.
pray that it's not.
Because then shall be great affliction such as not occurred ever.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it just affirms that even then the Sabbath would still be observed,
Well, that's okay.
which is
I
what
have
the
no
most
kids.
Christian world says no.
Well, he was
Years ago.
anticipating that it's at the time that this was going to happen that somebody would be observing the Sabbath,
Yes.
and that they would be praying that it wouldn't happen on a Sabbath.
Regardless of whether or not someone's observing, it's almost like the event will be on the seventh day.
This is happening in Jerusalem, and the Sabbath will be being observed there.
That is true.
Yeah.
Maybe not here,
That's
but
a
it
good
Then
will be
it's almost
there.
like a signal that in the winter on the seventh day,
Yeah.
if this terrible thing,
Well, that's
it's almost
always-
like
Yeah.
a clue.
That's always been a good day to attack the Jews, and you can
Right.
see
Yeah.
in,
You know where
Yom
it's supposed to be.
Kippur,
yeah.
Yom Kippur.
If you read in the book of the
Sabbath.
Maccabees, at first they didn't fight; they just allowed themselves to be slaughtered.
Thousand of
killed.
them.
Yeah. So, and then they were like, okay, wait. The commandment is to rest, but
Not
just
to
like
sleep.
Yeshua taught us,
Unless it's to save.
unless it's to save life, you may violate any commandment except for idolatry, sexual immorality, and
Blood sacrifice or something.
something like that. I remember the third one, but
Animal
yeah, that's
blood, meat sacrifice to idols or something.
right. Right. Yeah, there would be no reason to do that. But yeah, he's basically taught us you may violate the Sabbath to save life, even if it's the life of an animal. I mean, how much more so a man? And so these people, instead of hiding out and resting on Shabbat, they took up arms and they began to defend themselves.
Hey, the Greeks said, we'll just attack them once a week.
Yeah,
On the Sabbath.
but why not? And that's a brilliant plan. If they're just gonna sit around and not do anything on the Sabbath, there's a beautiful day to attack your enemy right there, man. Why would you do anything
I
different?
think the Jews smartened up. when
They did. They really had to figure out, okay, wait a minute. Does God want us all to die on the Sabbath because we must rest? Or should we protect human life? I think they figured that out rather quickly. But I don't want to, go too deep, and I hadn't anticipated, having a huge conversation about end times and stuff. I just kind of wanted to talk about And you'll see if you do a little bit of research like on YouTube or go out into the internet and do some research on Hanukkah, especially from a Messianic Judaism or a Hebrew roots perspective, you're going to see people tying in Hanukkah to end times. And that's an obvious parallel. There's no reason why you wouldn't. But I think also, more importantly, you can see from the text of the book of Maccabees and the history of what's going on here is that these people were willing to stand up and fight and die and stand up against oppression for people who are saying, you cannot do what you're doing. Now, we don't even have that. We can do whatever we want, and yet we still don't want to stand up for what is right. Because we might be afraid that somebody at our work is going to say that, dude's a weirdo or, whatever. I just think that the one of the major themes here is dedicating yourself and being committed to your God and His ways in opposition to the world, which is not a friend of God, right? Mm-hmm. Make sense to you guys?
Yep.
So I just had a couple of quick questions, noting the timeline of the text and how they relate to one another. What we can infer from this, I think we've already discussed, is that these things are all linked together. And this is just prophecy swinging around on an upward spiral, which is coming around again. We pray that we may be able to escape these things. If you read in the book of the Revelation about the church of Philadelphia, that He keeps them from the hour of testing, which is about to come upon the whole world. We pray that and He says to pray that you may be able to escape all these things that are coming upon the world. Now, how are you going to do that? How are you going to escape all the things that are coming upon this world? Are you going to keep the Sabbath and escape? Are you going to keep the Moedim and escape instead of celebrating Christmas? Or are you going to have something inside of you? Now, I'm not talking about external commandments. Because I wear tzitzit, I'm going to be saved. Because I keep the Sabbath, I'm going to be saved. Because I keep Hanukkah instead of Christmas, I'm going to be saved. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in our community of faith who believe that. Now we're special. Now we have set ourselves apart from our fellow Christians because we have begun to observe these commandments. You know what? And many of us can still have the same heart condition we had when we were sitting in the Sunday pew.
Oh, some of the things you're going to be saved from is those scorpion bites, those boils,
Yes.
that awful heat when the sun gets so close to the earth,
Yeah.
the pain of that darkness.
Yeah.
How are we going to be escaping that?
I don't know, but when it's
I don't know. I just hope it is.
Cloud by day and a pillar by night.
when the bolts come down, it says you the ones that are asleep.
Well,
at night, they're gonna
Jerry's
be
absolutely
saved.
right. Somebody's going to be
It's
saved.
going to be safe.
Somebody is.
Those white things that
We
sting
can-
and the scorpions, whatever they are.
You think
You want to have a seal of the mark of your God on your forehead? I certainly do want to be one of those people that has got a stamp of the mark of God on
Me
his
too,
forehead and is
but
protected.
That's why I want to be right
I think
today.
if you
And
got
I
the Holy
think the
Spirit, if
best-
Holy Spirit, you'll
I
get
didn't
it.
know that was going to make us be exact. Well, I guess during the Exodus, when the Passover lamb and all those things were going on,
The first
there
three,
were
they all
certain
got.
things that the Israelite,
That's right.
the Jewish people.
There was a
did.
distinction made. And I think you can clearly see the distinction in the book
I
of the
don't think there's a
Revelation.
distinction on the 6 seals, but on the trumpets and the bowls.
Oh, you get
Yeah, that's a whole
I
different
can't-
thing. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate where you're going with that. But you know what? There is a distinction made at some point,
Yeah.
Right.
just like there was in the Exodus.
Yeah.
And I just want to point
I'm not sure
out
what it is.
that the best thing we can do is be humble. And because I have trouble thinking that I'm even close to being worthy of being one of those people.
It's not a matter of worthy, it's a matter of
What he did for you
today.
to
I'm like, Lord, you're holding me today, and I gotta trust you're gonna have me ready to be held on.
That's
Because
right.
I can't do it.
That's right. We
I
must
can't.
trust him and we must
I get
not.
feeling weak and frightened just thinking about it.
I
I'm not
know.
looking at the
But he
Lord.
says, do not be afraid.
I know.
We are commanded not to be afraid,
Think
but that's
about
hard.
this. If you haven't got the boils, this guy over here does, and he's got food in his house, you might be able to slip in and get a little bit of that food. Because he's gonna be hurting so bad, he's
So
not
it's
gonna
gonna
be
be
able to stop
okay
you.
to steal under those
No, I'm
circumstances?
not. You won't be able to by yourself. You're gonna have to do something.
That's when Johnson's going to raid the Mormon pantry.
No,
I'm sending Johnson on a secret
Well-
mission to raid the Mormons.
I'm gonna buy the house
You know,
next
there's
door
stuff
so that you
about-
can take care of us.
This is my kids.
I don't know.
I'm totally making jokes. Sorry, that is not a good joke. Velma?
Well, the Bible says that trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him,
Yes.
And He will direct your path.
That is correct.
Which means you're trusting Him completely to direct your path.
Yeah.
To protect you and take you where you need to be from point A to B, or death, or whatever.
And you and I know that trusting is a hard thing to do.
Yes, it is.
It's a difficult
We
thing
gotta
to
be
do.
Trusting
practicing
is-
every day.
Trusting feels like reckless abandonment.
It does.
It feels like you're standing on the edge of a cliff backwards,
That's right.
and no one's pushing you, but you are allowing yourself to fall back into the arms
Yeah, that's not
of
easy.
someone who protects you
That's not an
from
easy
falling
task.
and dashing your feet against the stones.
That is not an easy task.
No.
But we must do it. He commands us not to be afraid.
If
And he
we don't,
also
he'll take
commands
us
us
to
to
the
keep
place where we will
ourselves
do it.
unstained by the world, Grace.
And what keeps away fear? It's love. I think it really
Yes.
all boils down to love God. When you love God, then you do what He says. Then He will protect you because that's what He
Yes,
says.
and remember when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in the book of Matthew, that God is so awesome that He demands that we love each other even
Yes.
before He demands that we love Him. That's how unselfish He is.
Said love one
To
another.
say, I'm more impressed with you loving each other than I am with you loving me.
I think
Well,
He
our
just
love for
knows
each
us
other shows our
better.
love for Him.
Yes.
The
Because
two are
he-
one and the same.
Yes.
He reasoned out. I mean, it's just practical. It's just if you cannot love somebody you see, how can you love somebody you don't see?
Beautiful, beautiful
So
expression.
I
yeah.
think God is just very reasonable.
He is
He
a very
is very
reasonable guy.
reasonable. He's so reasonable.
You're absolutely right.
Well, I think too, as a Christian, you have to realize that loving someone doesn't have to do with what they do, what they are. It's just what it is.
That is correct.
Oh, the word
Love
is
is placed upon.
That's absolutely
Placed
right.
upon.
Absolutely right.
I didn't mean to say reasonable. I think God is realistic.
Reasonable also works. I think that He is both reasonable and realistic.
I mean, for that instance, I'd rather say He was realistic. That if you love somebody who's there, how can you love somebody you don't see?
I totally understand. And I think that's all I have for you. I just wanted to kind of, those are the things that were kind of placed upon my heart as I was studying this week, is to, there's some definite parallels here. We know some things are coming. Let us keep ourselves strong, unafraid, and doing what is right so that we will not be ashamed at His coming, right? Let us pray.
Wait.
Oh, yes, I
wanna say
apologize.
something about that too.
Please do.
That, no.
Do you want to say what about what?
You said as things are progressing.
Yes.
I think we should be really careful about, I always call it writing in pen instead of writing in pencil. Because there's a lot of assumptions we have about how this is going to happen in the future.
And when it might happen.
And when. And I think there's assumptions we have we don't even realize we have. And I think we need to just always say, it says, and blurting out something that we remember, look at the actual words and see what it actually says, because we can make the slightest little jump. It can say something and we can just, well, it sure sounds like this, so I might as well just think about it like that, and that could be tripping you up for the way it's really going to go down.
Yeah,
So
and I
just
think,
keep your-
frankly, it's you're
everything in
absolutely
pencil.
right. You're absolutely right. And I think that rather, bless you, than worrying about how it's going to go down is how you're going to go down in history, and what is going to be written next to your name in the book.
In a good book.
Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. That's the thing. So let us pray.